Welcome to the Glenn Mercer Show, where we talk all things vegan. If you're not already vegan, no worries, we'll get you there. If you are, tune in for health advice, information on climate change, and all the damage done by our most destructive industry, animal agriculture. We'll also talk cooking, theater, film, and culture. My 2 reasons for starting this podcast: to entertain, to inform, and to make people vegan. Oh, that's 3. Shit. All right, welcome to the Glenn Mercer Show. You could find us across all your favorite podcast platforms. You could find us on YouTube, and please remember to subscribe. It costs you nothing. And you could find us at realmeneatplants.com. My guest today is the CFO, that's the Chief Foodie Officer, or the Chief Farming Officer, we'll find out, of a plantbaseddiet.org, Mike Young. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm now, Mike 55 years young. Since I saw you last, I was Mike 54 years young.
All right, now let's talk about that, because when you were on my show and you were 54 years old, you told me that you were planning to live to 150.
Yes.
And I admit, I acknowledge this, I was a little bit skeptical at the time. Could anyone live to 150? And if so, would Mike Young be the guy?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure about it. But I have to say, it's a year later.
Mm-hmm.
You're 55.
Yep.
You're getting closer. It's getting more credible.
I've never been this close to 100.
Yeah. You're getting closer. And I think now, maybe I was a fool to be a skeptic.
Well, I think that it's surprising to just about everybody out there, and I think that the surprises will continue to happen as time goes on. And as I think I may have mentioned to you last year, I don't expect to convince anybody till I'm maybe 110 and still
Yeah.
talking about this, because at that
Yeah.
point people will really start to question things. But actually, one big change has happened. You talked about my title.
Yeah.
There's actually 2 big changes. I'm still the CFO, the Chief Foodie Officer, because I love to eat. That's critical. It's a critical component of this, health span and longevity. But I'm also now the Chief Farming Officer because we have launched some of our own growing programs. I've been out there planting stuff, and I've always worked in the past few years as volunteers at organic farms, but we're doing our own stuff now. That's one thing. The other thing I want to mention is that we have clarified our goal. I mean,
Uh-huh.
yeah, live to 150. I say that. That's the book, the free resource that we have. But what's the goal? Like, how do you know you're on the way? How do you know you're heading in the right direction? Well, we've also pivoted, and I know I talked to you about this last year, into health optimization events. So everything we do is about health optimization. But the question is, what is health optimization? How do you know you're on the right path? How do you know you've arrived?
Wait a minute. I'm the podcast host. Let me ask, what is health optimization? How do you know you're on the right path? And how do you know you've arrived? There you go, doing my job.
Yes, thank you. Well, we defined the term, we put it on our website. We have a little page there that's called the definition of terms. So we say that it's a balanced state of health that's verified by an absence of non-communicable disease.
Okay.
How do you like that?
But wait a minute. There are some diseases that are pretty bad for you that are also communicable.
Communicable, yes. We're not talking about that, okay? We're talking about most of the reason why most of the people are sick and takes most of the money in the healthcare system. That's 80% plus is non-communicable disease. And, I'd also say that our goal as an organization now has been clarified also to say that we are trying our goal is to eradicate non-communicable disease. That's our goal as an organization. We think that is totally doable because, just like the 100, we talked last year about the Live to 150 book. And, I think I conveyed to you that I don't have any amazing scientific studies or discoveries or anything like that to convey. It's all just age old timeless advice and good habits. And for whatever reason, folks haven't been brought up in that as knowledge. But
All right.
I think that
So
they
what are you growing on your farm, Mike?
all right. Well, we have several properties that are growing. We have the most recent one I'd say where I've been doing it myself, 100% myself, is called Mountain Ridge Farm, and it's in western side of Virginia, not West Virginia, but western side, up in the mountains. And it's called Mountain Ridge because it's at a height of 4,000 feet above sea level. It's right on the right on the ridge of the mountain, and there is northern fruits. We're growing grapes, cherries, and figs. So
Growing everything organically?
better than organic. We prefer to say chemical free, and that is definitely better than organic. And we also use the word regenerative. You know, we also say we don't use animal products at all because most organic foods actually are not technically vegan because they don't use chemical fertilizers, but they use animal manures in almost every case.
So can you put on the label BTO, better than organic?
I guess so.
All right.
Right now, we're not a business. You know, we're just growing for ourselves and for others
Now,
who.
when you say growing for ourselves, who's ourselves?
Well, really, it's just our board, but my wife and I, Denise, are really the ones that do most of it, and we financially support the most of the projects that we do. You know, so it's really us that are going out there on a regular basis. So in the growing season up north, which just started, we just opened the farm up again for this season. I did a lot of work last year. That's going on up here in Virginia. We have stuff going on in Ecuador at the Terra Frutis community where we own a house that you can rent on Airbnb, and that house has been planted with tropical fruits all around it in the last year.
So
So
when you want to go from one farm to the other, you've got to take a flight.
yeah, yeah. Well, but keep in mind, the reason why we're in Ecuador is because, you know, I've given you a lot of high level goals that are not easily obtainable. Okay. So along with that, we want to make things easier. And we were thinking, well, if you could check off every box in the attempt to achieve these goals and do it the best that you could, where would you want to do that? And that's why we're in Ecuador, because we think that right now that's the best place to go, you know, to do these things. And we can own property there as well, which we do. And like I said, we have it on Airbnb so people can rent it very affordable. It's about $35 a night. And you know, people can see it's there. And yeah, getting there is a journey. Yeah, it's an adventure, but it's a community. It's a community of people that are zero animal products and zero chemicals as well.
How many people are in this community?
Probably about 10 permanent residents
So
that
right now in this community, there are about 10 people there.
yes, and then in it's called Terra Frutis, but our section where it's residential lots is called TFPP1, Terra Frutis Personal Plots number 1. And in that section, there's maybe 5 people. And that section also has very specific dietary requirements. We passed these last year also since I talked to you. And those dietary requirements are way more strict than vegan. The community as a whole is I say, trying to figure out what veganism even means because they defined it in the community that people cannot have, of course, livestock, but they also can't have pets because they want the animals to all be free. So now also the dietary restrictions say that you cannot have any oil, sugar, or salt brought into the community because those are all isolates. Those are not whole foods, you know? So that is a community-wide thing that we passed actually since I talked to you last. I didn't even know it would ever get to like that. I mean, I would love it. I do love it. I just wasn't sure that everybody else was on board with that.
Wow. So tell me about the people in this community. Maybe you could just use their first name or something, but
Mhm.
what kind of person joins this community?
All right. Well, we have Nick and Kristen, who's a married couple who just had a baby in the last year. They live in California, but they visit Ecuador from time to time. I know that in talking with Kristen and Nick, but specifically Kristen, they're familiar and close to like True North, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and
Sure.
they're on that kind of level, you know. So they were also thinking, what's the best somebody could do? If you could check off all the boxes, where would you go? And then, of course, they found them on the internet, so they bought land. We've met them a few times, usually in the wintertime, they're there. And, you know, so that's a married couple with a baby. And then there's also,
So this baby is really starting young on a
yeah,
health journey.
Yes,
This
that's for
kid's
sure.
going to live to 200 easy.
And that's something we've always recognized as needed to happen. People need to have kids born into this lifestyle, even preconception, I'd say. And that's how the
Preconception.
yes, because so much
Wow, that's very early.
yeah, so much is epigenetics, right? I mean, your genes will express different and better as long as you're living the proper lifestyle in harmony with nature. So that's what they're trying to do the best they can. They're not perfect, but they're really trying, as opposed to like my generation, which had this wasn't even on the radar, any of the
No, I got to tell you, in my preconception period, I was leading a really a lousy lifestyle.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't on the radar, it wasn't
No,
it wasn't
I
talked about. So
I was just kind of decadent in my preconceived years. I
yeah,
don't
it's
know. I had these preconceived notions about having fun
yeah,
and drinking and partying,
yep,
and I
that's
wasn't
right.
in good shape.
Well, that's also a generational thing, I'd say, because I think well, I'm Generation X, born 1970. So grew up in the 70s and 80s. And that was just a totally different generation compared to millennials. And then you come to Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And it seems like Gen
Is
Z,
there a Gen Alpha now?
yeah, yeah, that's the youngest. They don't leave the house
How
anymore.
old are these kids?
I can't remember the exact framework, but
Uh,
they're the youngest ones that are out there now. And they,
I'm so old that there have been so many generations that I can't even keep track of them. I didn't
yeah.
know there was a Gen Alpha until today. I'm annoyed about it.
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of differences I see. Like I've also been researching this over the last year or two just to learn about it because I've got my kids also. Like our kids, Denise and I, our kids are older. They're adults. They're not kids. I wish I knew all this information when they were growing up, but
Mhm.
at least I can try to convey it through our educational nonprofit to others so that they can do better. And I say that the younger generations they have a whole different outlook on life. I mean, you may see how they don't really get married. They hardly have any children, really, compared to what previous generations had. So they're looking at things in a much different way. They're questioning a lot of things, and I think that things really have to have meaning for them to do something. And so I
Well,
think
but are they not having children because they're not having sex because they're on the phone? Is
that's
that
actually that's probably part of it. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So how old are your kids?
well, we have 3, and they're between 25 and 35, and we
Uh-huh.
also have 6 grandchildren. Yeah.
You have six grandchildren, so they've been off the phone.
They have for a few minutes here and there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Wow, you have six grandchildren.
That's right, and I could wish I could say that they all follow what we're saying, they're all doing it, but, that's just not the reality because
Oh no, how many are any of them doing it?
they well, when I can get them at the right place in the right time, either of us, and the stars have lined up, they'll start to understand and they'll acknowledge. But then when all the other influences from everywhere affect them, they don't follow it.
They
I mean,
blow in the wind?
sure, that's like most people, I'd say. I think the challenge, since this movement's been around for so long, I think the challenge now is to practice it in the real world because I think the knowledge is there. And that's why we're developing all these projects, right? We have that farm in Western Virginia, we have Ecuador. We almost launched another farm in Naples, Florida, on some property we've had for quite a while. And that I thought it was going to take off, but actually we didn't get enough volunteers. We'll still be working on that. Okay. So, and then one more growing project that we're working on is in Uganda because
Uganda.
yes, and again, we're trying to check off all the boxes, right? So, where would you want to go besides Ecuador? That's at high elevation, uh, very low risk of environmental bad weather or disasters, and you can grow all year round, and it's at the right elevation at the equator, so that you can just get the best of everything, and that's
But can you
Uganda.
really live to 150 flying all that often?
I don't know. I mean, we went to Uganda for the first time in December, and we're gonna go back again in December, and we're gonna bring people with us this time. And keep in mind, um, let me describe this to you. we went there for multiple reasons. I wouldn't just go. I don't usually just go and do one thing in one place. It's gotta satisfy a number of factors and facets that go along with this movement and the work that we're doing. So yeah, we wanted to go and do an African safari. I mean, that's like something that everybody I feel like wants to do at least once in their lifetime. We did that, but we also went because we convinced the travel company to provide us with food that meets our 6-pillar healthy vegan food requirement, that we developed through our
Yes.
nonprofit. And that's kind of one of the frameworks that we use in our events. So they agreed to do that. And in addition to that, we have been talking with a nonprofit that's 100% vegan in Uganda, and they run a 100% vegan school that's actually open to the public with no tuition charge. So we talked to them. We said, if we come by, can we talk to you? Can we see the school? And they said, yeah, you can come see the school. You can actually meet all the students. And you can go to our vegan festival that's going to happen around the same time, and you can give a talk at the vegan festival. So we did. We did all of that in December. And now I think we may hopefully be entering now. We're in the process of doing this into a partnership with the nonprofit and the school in Uganda to start our own permaculture projects there, and teaching everyone about the 6 pillars of healthy vegan food and why you want to stick to that specifically to optimize your health.
Well, man, if you have farms in Virginia and Florida and Ecuador and Uganda, people are going to say you're 150. What do you do with all your time? You're going to say, I fly.
Well, right now we're in the process of starting these up, right? These are the early
Yeah.
stages. I would hope that once they get going and are managed properly, and folks who get involved are going to realize this is the best way to live life. This is extremely sustainable to the degree that no other form of life is, because we acknowledge as a nonprofit that most of the systems in society are degenerative. Almost every system you can name, I would say, it's set up right now, currently, in a degenerative fashion. So we're trying to reset some systems into regenerative fashions. So I don't think that we'll always be in this mode now of trying to plant these farms and get folks, get like-minded people involved. I think eventually, just like we're seeing preconception and young babies growing up in this movement, we'll see more people at every stage here, so we won't have to do that.
Okay. Now, tell us about the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine that you follow.
Okay, well, that's part of our framework of everything that we do now. We've also published this since I talked to you last. So the quick way I can explain it is that what do we do as a nonprofit? We curate fun events with food that doesn't harm humans. That's what we do.
Okay, that's
Okay,
good. I'm
and
on board.
nobody else is saying that. Okay, but the reason they don't is because you have to be so specific, because there's so many things that could harm you. And I already told you that our goal is to eradicate non-communicable disease in humans. So that's our overall goal. So how are we going to do it? We curate these fun events. And of course, part of that is growing food so we can know where the food comes from. But what's the framework? Like, what if you say, okay, Mike, what has to happen at your event, or what happens at your events that are different than somebody else's? So I'll say
Wait
two.
a minute. I'm the podcast host.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, what happens at your events that are so different?
All right, we practice and use as a framework both the 6 pillars of healthy vegan food and the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. All
Uh-huh.
right, so lifestyle medicine is not our concept, but it's a general concept which you're probably familiar with, that has 6 pillars, that is being used by the existing medical system to kind of integrate this idea that it's your habits that will give you most of the positive results in your health. So we are very much on board with that. We know it's not a 100% plant-based or 100% vegan program, but one of the pillars of the 6 is plant-based nutrition. Okay, so we can say, well, that's why we mate our 6-pillar healthy vegan food with the plant-based nutrition pillar, and we say we're going to clarify that plant-based nutrition pillar because we want it to be, health optimizing. So it's got to meet the 6 facets or the 6 pillars of our healthy vegan food. And now I'm sure you want to know what they are, right?
Hey, Mike, what are they?
Okay, so the food is the most important thing. So first thing is, overall, this is not a pillar, but just overall, any food you source needs to be as organic and chemical free as possible. Now, the 6 pillars. Number 1 is there are 0 animal products allowed.
All
So
right.
that's why we call it healthy vegan food. Number 2, you got to have whole plant fiber. So juice is not okay. Any form of processed vegan or plant-based foods is not okay because almost always they pull the fiber out. So that's 2. Number 3 is 0 alcohol. We will never acknowledge that alcohol is a health food. In fact, it's a group 1 carcinogen. So we have to stipulate that. Some folks don't seem to be clear on that. And then there's the 3 other ones, like I mentioned, are already regulated in our Terra Frutis Ecuador community, which are 0 added oil, 0 added salt, and 0 refined sugar. However, we will also say that for the refined sugar, you can use dates, maple syrup, or molasses. And
Now, maple syrup, isn't that a somewhat processed food?
well, it's refined. The question is refined. So we follow the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies definition, and looking at their website, that's what they allow. Now, that's evolving because even last year, we didn't have it that way. Last year, we said dates, agave, and maple syrup, but it turns out that they removed agave from their website recently. So we also removed it and we put molasses in place because we see they're talking about that. And one other thing to clarify is that for the no added oil portion, we also clarify that to say that you cannot have more than 10% of calories from fat, because that's a clarification of that pillar. So that's the 6 pillars right there. So every food item at every event that we do has to meet that. So like we have local pot.
Let me interrupt you. What about bread?
Bread can be made that way. And in fact, on our cruise, our annual health optimization cruise, we do have them make bread and put it at the table like you'd normally see at a sit-down restaurant. But it's got to meet that pillar. And one of the biggest things that they have to make sure that's not going to happen is they're not going to add any salt. Because
So it's a whole grain wheat bread without salt.
correct. Yeah, and it's not too difficult to meet as long as the chefs are open-minded, because most of them are like, how do you make bread without adding salt? I hear this all the time from them. I'm like, it's totally possible. It's just that, bread ends up being more like a regular old processed food unless it meets that guidelines. And you can still do it. And we do it. We don't eat much bread, but we can do it.
And do you allow flour in, let's say a pancake made without a sweetener?
Correct. We don't have any stipulation on that. We in fact, here's another example. The white rice is okay, and actually white rice. Some people say, oh, the nutrition strip, but the reality is, it's almost it's not. Brown rice isn't super high in fat, but white rice is like a quarter of the fat content that brown rice is. So it actually has a lot of benefits for the average person who is eating way too high of a percentage of calories from fat and causing a lot of chronic health issues.
Okay. All right. So that's your first pillar is the food, plant-based nutrition.
Yes, well, that's for lifestyle medicine, yes. And the other ones are just also habits. Like we go back to the book I wrote, Live to 150. I mean, most of the habits can be grouped into certain categories, and that's basically what lifestyle medicine does, the 6 pillars, right? One is about the food, one is about sleep, one is about social connections, one is about getting enough exercise, and the last one is about stress management. Okay, so all those things are basically, hey, just have some good habits, you know. And so
Mhm.
so every event that we say, we're saying it's not just the food. You have to incorporate all this. Life is about balance. So like I mentioned, we're doing potlucks. Like I won't even go to just a vegan or plant-based potluck because in most cases they don't acknowledge the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, and the food is going to harm my health. So when we do potlucks, we are kind of strict. Actually, someone told me don't use that word strict. I try not to use it. I'll say we are more closely aligned with nature. That's what we are.
All right.
Okay. So when you're more closely aligned with nature, you're not going to harm your health. Your health is going to flourish. So our potlucks are more closely aligned with nature. A lot of people think no one would show up, but people do show up because people really don't want to hurt themselves if you give them the chance. You really explain it to them. And then
Now let's talk about the people who show up because I get your emails. How do people get on your email list? They go to a plantbaseddiet.org?
Yes, you go to plantbaseddiet.org, or you can just email me directly. It's a plantbaseddiet.org at Gmail, and we'll put you on. Simple as that. That's the quickest way. Yeah. So basically, what we started recently is what we call health optimization clubs. And what we'll do is we'll do an in-person discussion. Okay. We moved away from presentations. It's a discussion. We have topics. We have some stuff that you can do for homework. Like what was it? Last month, we talked about, this month we're talking about cancer. Last month, we talked about reversing Alzheimer's and dementia. And this is all based on studies. Like Ornish did a study on how to reverse Alzheimer's and dementia. It was released last year. We said, hey, just go read that study or watch the video that I did where I'm reading it and giving my opinion. And let's talk about it. Let's talk about how it works, and what you need to do and what you want to avoid. And that's kind of what our club is we'll talk about that, and you can do it.
So this club, does it cost money to join this
No,
club?
no.
So how do you join the club?
You just respond, just like we're on Zoom. If you're remote, you just RSVP on our calendar, which can be found at plantbasedevents.info. Plantbasedevents.info is our calendar. It takes you to Eventbrite, and you can see all of our events in chronological order. You can go back and see our old ones. And actually, you can see also, it helps to verify who we are, because you'll see that we have hosted like 30,000 guests or something like that over 100 events.
So your events are not on a plantbaseddiet.org. They're on plantbasedevents.info.
Yes.
Two separate websites.
Well, that's Eventbrite, because Eventbrite is, well known as a source for quality, legitimate events. So
can you learn about the events at a plantbaseddiet.org? Does it tell you?
Some of them, but most of the time on Eventbrite, each event will have its own, information with pictures and a description, so you can learn all about what that's going to be. So just so people know who aren't familiar with plantbasedevents.info, when you go there, you'll see everything in the next year on our calendar. And it's anything from their monthly club events, either local or online, and you'll only see the next one for that. We just do it each month as it goes. And then you'll see our annual events, which are like, we have a Thanksgiving event in person in Southwest Florida at a farm.
Is that in Naples?
Bonita Springs, actually, just right next to Naples.
Okay.
Yeah, so
is that at an Indian restaurant? Where is it?
No, we did an Indian restaurant in the past. This is just a potluck. It's our health optimization Thanksgiving potluck. It's on a farm outside, and we just have a nice, meet up there and pick.
All right. Well, this is what I wanted to ask you. How many people come to that, and what are their ages? Are you getting any young people, or is this mainly senior citizens?
I'd say that event, we've done it twice already. We're going into our third year. First and second events, I say average together with maybe 35 people at each event, and all ranges from people carrying babies who are pregnant or pregnant to people who are retired, and everyone in between. We're very clear. We're trying to say, look, we're about health optimization. Like I said, health optimization is a balanced state of health that is verified by a lack of non-communicable disease. If that sounds attractive to you, then our events, hopefully you want to show up. But
it is attracting both retired people and fetuses.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so those are our health optimization events. We have our monthly meetings. We have our annual Thanksgiving, potlucks, health optimization club. I'd say that's what those are. Free to join, like no cost. And then we have our annual travel events, which we're doing now. Okay. And we've already done the health optimization cruise twice. We're going into our third year. It's getting better.
Where do you go on these cruises?
Yes, it's just one cruise. It's just one cruise that we do. We call it the health optimization cruise. It checks off all the boxes too. Not only does it check off all the boxes for 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, 6 pillars of healthy vegan food. You can do cooked, you can do raw, 100% if you want, or any combination. And plus, we realize that part of health is being and getting enough sun outdoors. So we go in the coldest, darkest time of the year down to the Caribbean, okay, in the middle of January. And that's intentionally why we have that event where we do at that time of year, because even people in Florida are having their Florida winter, and it's brighter, it's lighter, it's warmer. There's more going on the further closer to the equator that you get.
Do you stop at any islands?
Yes, we stop in the Caribbean on Easter. We're going to go to the western side. There's 3 days of nonstop education, from talks to cooking demonstrations, and then of course private meals with our all the healthy vegan food. I tell people, zero portion control, all you can eat. They'll serve you as many courses as you want. It's all gourmet, sit down, like $100 meal type of stuff, and it's all to our specifications. That's the thing. You can't get it anywhere else, and you can do 100% raw too if you want to.
How many people went on your last cruise?
I think it was like 80 people. 80 people.
80 people. Wow.
Yes. So we have our own private dining area, and it's it's getting bigger. The first year was I think 60, and then we were 80.
Oh, are you on a cruise with other people who aren't part of your group?
Correct.
And
We are.
they're eating different food.
That's right. And I tell people on the event, I'm like, look, I know that every restaurant on the ship has plant-based and vegan options, but don't eat them unless you don't want the full benefits. Because the only way to get the full benefits of health is to eat with us in our own private dining area. And then of course you get to talk with all the like-minded people that are just trying to do the best that they can, really.
Now, since these cruises also have people who are not part of your group, do you interact with them and say, hey, you want to get healthy?
We have, and most of the time it's kind of a surprise because your cruise, your average cruise is setting you back health-wise.
Right.
So we tell people that well, we offer a vacation you don't have to recover from. So
Yeah.
it's we see that the average person is increasing their consciousness level in health, and but we have a long way to go. So we definitely are always extending the invitation, but we don't usually pick up just people that are just willing to do this when they're on their regular cruise. They have to. There's a lot of the people that are on this cruise are really, like I said, trying to do the best that they can. They're trying to put some. They have to put some thought into this. Regular
Mhm.
society is set up not to optimize your health.
Now, do you have speakers on this cruise
We do.
or
We do. We have presentations of all kinds. Like I said, cooking demonstrations, regular presentations, let's say exercise activities, and it's all done by people who are understanding of our framework, our 6 pillars of healthy vegan food, 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. We have practicing medical people from nurses to physicians, most of which are board certified in lifestyle medicine, so they understand this. And the key is they are practicing. They're actively working with patients because that's where we see the biggest need right now. We don't see too much disagreement on what you need to do. It's how in the world are you going to do it when everything else is working against you?
right?
So, okay, also we have our safari, which is new for this year. Denise and I went, like I said, and these other folks, if you want to go with us, also in December, a colder, darker time of the year for anyone in the United States. You're not getting your vitamin D. You don't go outdoors generally. Okay, so now you can go to Uganda, and you
If
can.
you're not getting your vitamin D, I've always said this, go to Uganda.
That's it.
Absolutely.
That's it. Yeah. And but never before have you been able to go to Uganda, go on a multi-day safari with the 6 pillars of healthy vegan food being presented to you at every meal. And
Right.
you get to go visit this Atlas vegan school, 100% vegan school. You get to see how it works. Actually, Denise and I even planted some trees when we were there last year.
Now, who started this vegan school?
It's Musisi Mike. He runs the Love for All Uganda nonprofit.
Wow.
And I met him online, just like I kind of met you online. Meet a lot of
Yeah.
people, a lot of great people online.
So he's got this vegan school.
Yes.
And is it a school that simply educates in veganism, or does he have a school for children that they go there to get educated?
Well, it is for younger children. It's I'd say probably grades 1 through 6 at this point.
So in addition to learning about veganism, they're learning math and reading and other things.
Yes, exactly. It's a regular school. The
Hmm.
framework, kind of like our framework I described, their framework is just, hey, we can do life without animal products, and that's how we're going to do it. And that's how we're going to raise these kids because their parents, obviously see some benefit in that. And so I think it's the future, truly, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so
Well, good for him. Maybe you can help me get him on my show.
yeah, and actually, there's another key thing about Uganda is English is the native language. So
Right.
there is no language barrier. So like I said, we went to their vegan festival, which we'll also go to with anybody who wants to join us on the Health Optimization Safari. They'll get to go to and potentially even give a talk because anybody who's going to go on this trip obviously is passionate about it because we're very specific, right, about all the things that we're doing.
Mm.
And, everybody in Uganda, I will tell you, they understand English. They're open-minded, they're friendly, they're happy people. I mean, I
Mhm.
was very surprised. I wasn't sure what to expect because Uganda is the youngest country in the world. The average age is 16, if you can believe that. That's the average age of the country. So they, like over here, we're having problems where people don't want to get married and don't want to have kids for whatever reason. That's most countries now, but they're the opposite. They're growing rapidly, and with English being the native language, it's kind of like the 50s over there, and that how it
Mhm.
was in the US. Everybody
Yeah.
was a lot of optimism and just a lot of things going right. But the thing is, it's interesting that they don't have any money. Really, almost no one has any money over there. But you realize that's not what's needed to be happy. And most people are in shape because most people don't own cars. They're walking around, riding their bikes. And of course, they can grow plants on every corner. They have markets selling pineapples, watermelons, and bananas everywhere. Everywhere you go, those are available.
Well, is it possible that the key to happiness is vitamin D?
It
That
may be.
they're getting all this sunlight. This is why there's a D in Uganda.
Yeah.
Mm. So maybe they know the secret, and that's just great.
Yeah, so we were, like I said, we were surprised. We didn't know what to expect when we went, and
Yeah.
we were just so impressed that we were like, we need to make this available to others.
And you're going to have a farm there too now?
Well, it'll be a partnership because the way things are, like we own land in Ecuador and we can legally own land, but in Uganda it's different. So we have to partner in order to own land. And actually, it's better because, like you pointed out, we don't want to have to get on a plane every time we need to go
Right,
weed the crops or whatever.
right,
So we want to work with others. So
right.
I think it'll be a good partnership.
Okay. I'll point out there's a D in Ecuador too. So you're doing well.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, so what are you going to be growing in what are you growing now in Ecuador?
Okay, Ecuador, we're trying to keep it low maintenance because generally we have guests renting the house, just experiencing the lifestyle going
Hmm.
down there. That's why we built the house. We knew we weren't going to go live there all the time, although we very well may in the near future. Just depends on how all the rest of this goes. But we grow easy things, so we got bananas, very, very easy to grow. Papayas, also super easy to grow. We have some pineapple plants, although they require a little bit more attention and they don't grow as much as you would want because generally each plant only produces one fruit once a year. So, it's not like bananas, which are constant, and papayas, they're just constantly fruiting and producing. So, also we have there's so many fruits that you've probably never heard of, and I've never heard of because the industry only picks certain ones
Hmm.
because they are easiest and most profitable and ship best. So we have Rollinia growing over there, which is native to that area. It's called Rollinia. It looks like an alien type of an egg that's bumpy on the outside, and then you open it up and it's this white custard thing with big black seeds in it, and it's excellent, And so we just wanted to make sure to grow that at the house too.
Okay. So you curate all these fun events, these dinners and potlucks in Florida,
Hmm.
cruises. Now you're adding a safari to the list.
Yep, and yeah, and also I forgot to mention another event series that we
Yeah.
do, which you've had for 5, 6 years now, is called Plants to Table. We have one in Northern Virginia at an organic farm we partner with, and I volunteer at, and we also have one down in Naples at an organic farm.
Now,
Once a year,
now it's called what again?
Plants to Table. It's kind of
Plants
like
to table. Now,
your
is it simply a meal or is it something else?
yes, yes, it's like a farm to table dinner, only it's 100% plants. So we call it Plants to Table. It only happens once at harvest time. So the one in Virginia happens in October. That's harvest time.
What part of Northern Virginia is this?
Loudoun County, which it's right outside of DC, just west of DC.
Okay.
So
So this is some distance from your farm in Virginia.
correct, they're not close by, but this is a farm that I volunteer at that I've known Farmer Dave over there for 5 years now. We've done it 5 times already. So what the idea is that we're going to take almost all the food that we're going to serve is going to be grown there, and I help to grow it because I volunteer once a
Mhm.
week over there, and fully organic.
You volunteer once a week there?
Yes,
Well,
yes.
where do you live?
Well, I live in the future. That's one of the things. The
You
reason I said
live in the future, so
yes.
are you 150 yet?
I don't think so. Not yet. Not in Earth
So
years.
how far in the future? I didn't even realize that this was a time travel interview. How far in the future are you right now?
Well, when I say live in the future, we live in the future paradigm already because the traditional paradigm is that you live in a box with four walls and a roof and you commute to your local job and you go back. That's the paradigm. Okay, that's a traditional paradigm for the United States anyway, the American dream. But we're digital nomads. So that's the new paradigm. And as long as digital service is reliable, fast, and ubiquitous, it doesn't matter where you are anymore. Okay, that's the future. So that's one of the
All
reasons.
right, I'm going to ask a simple question. I don't want to talk politics. I just want a yes
Yeah,
or no answer.
sure.
You promise just a yes or no answer.
We don't get into politics, so I'll gladly say that yes or no.
Right. Just yes or no answer. Where you are is the same guy president as where I am.
Yes.
All right.
Where I am right now, yes.
Okay. Just
Okay.
wanted to know.
Yes, I'm in Northern Virginia because I'm going to go over to Farmer Dave's tomorrow and help him out at the farm. We're going to be pounding in 10-foot tall T-posts to put up deer fencing around a new area that he's going to grow in. So I'm going to be helping out with that. And so
So when is this farm to table dinner in Northern Virginia?
October at the end of the growing season. So we plan a meal that's based on all the harvest that happens around that time. And of course, the meal meets our 6 pillars of healthy vegan food. And in addition to that, we guarantee it's fully organic. So it's better than a regular event that we would have because it's
It's
100%.
probably better than organic, right?
Yes, yes. And in addition to that, it is gluten free because we know at a special event, a lot of times there's special requests and it's a
Right.
off dinner. So we want to be able to honor those. And
How many people come to this event?
generally between I'd say 50 and 100, between
Wow.
that
And
range.
where is it held?
At the farm, you eat,
At
you
the,
eat. We put tables outside and we prepare the food out there, and
what if you get bad weather?
it hasn't happened yet.
That's that's the
We have a
plan.
rain
It
date.
hasn't happened yet.
No, it hasn't happened yet, but we always have a rain date because people want to know because it's
Okay.
not the cheapest dinner. I mean, it's also a fundraiser for the farm and a fundraiser for our 501c3 nonprofit. So,
Okay.
their tickets are anywhere between like $60 and $100, depending upon when you buy them, because we have early birds if you want to buy them early.
Mhm.
And people get farm tours. They get social time. At that one, we always have live music because Dave is also a booking agent in the live music industry, so he can bring in some good talent
Mhm.
for us to play live music, and usually have a bonfire there too. So it's a lot of fun.
And um, what was I going to ask about that?
Well, we have two. That's the one in Northern Virginia. The one in Naples is either late February, early March, because they have the opposite growing season down there. All right. So like if you're gonna ask like where I am, like you did, I'm always where the food plants are actively growing outdoors. That's where I am. So you know where you won't find me. you know.
So do you spend your winters in Florida?
Yes, that's right. And then of
And
course
that,
we do, yeah, we
is
go to
is
Uganda and
Virginia as far north as you go?
no, we will take road trips, depending on who
But in terms of living as a place to live?
living. Yes, yes.
Yeah. And so with this farm in farm to table event in Northern Virginia, where do people who come as guests to that, where do they stay?
Well, it's almost all local people, although we
Oh,
will occasionally bring in some people who go to our events in other places, and we're all good with that, and we'll make arrangements for them. It's only a few people a year, and usually it's people who want to volunteer because we need a lot of volunteer help just to put on the event. I mean, most people are paid guests, but we have plenty of volunteers that need to join us.
but if someone comes from out of town just to go to that event,
Hmm.
they come from North Carolina, let's say, they drive
Uh,
up to that event. Are there hotel accommodations in the area
There
or
are, yeah. I
farm
mean,
accommodations or what?
definitely, there's accommodations there, but we don't appeal to people in that way usually because the one of the key benefits of this event is that you get to know your local farmer. You get to see where the food's being grown and how it's being grown, you know, because you're going to get that tour and you're going to get to eat it too. So it doesn't have as much meaning for someone out of the area.
Is that the same with the Florida event?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. You haven't been on this lifestyle all your life. At what age did you begin, did you become vegan and then start improving your diet?
All right. Well, that's a journey. Is the best way I could say that. It's been a journey the whole time, and I will acknowledge I'm getting better and better, and I'm at the best I've ever been now. So a lot of that is a gaining of knowledge because, like we discussed, we weren't taught this growing up. People didn't understand what this was. So it's a learning process and a figuring out process in a society and culture that is that is not doing these things generally. They're
Mhm.
not. So it's difficult. Now, I would say when did I become vegan? 2014, when I started the organization, a plant-based diet.org. That was 2014, so it's 11 years ago. And I've gotten better.
You were 44.
Yes, yes.
So the first 44 years you were not eating the ideal diet.
Well, when I go back to my earliest memories, I didn't want to eat meat growing up. I refused to eat meat. In fact,
Mm.
many times my parents made me eat it or maybe sit at the table for an hour or more. But it was never appetizing to me. I didn't know why, because growing up in the 70s and 80s, I didn't know anything about plant-based or vegan lifestyles. I'd never even heard of them at that point in time. There was no internet, obviously, during that time. And I just knew what my parents thought was best for me. And so that was one thing I did. I didn't have my first meat or hamburger till I was 15, around that age. In fact, I know exactly where it was. I remember I
Where was it?
out to my wife. I was out on a trip with friends. It was like a church or yeah, like a trip or something like that. And of course, it's peer pressure. Peer pressure is what makes you do all these things. You know, so I'd been around everybody for so long, they were all gonna stop at McDonald's. I was like, oh, maybe it's time.
So you had managed to refuse to have hamburger until you were 15.
Yeah. Yeah,
And did your parents pressure you
yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah, they thought I was gonna get sick, that, like,
and
I was
you
gonna.
refused the pressure even as a child?
Yes, but I just
Wow.
I thought it was gross. I thought I see the blood, I see the
Yeah.
muscle, the veins, you know, and the other stuff didn't have that on my plate. So, it's more than that, though. It goes beyond that because when I would go to McDonald's, and we all did in the 70s and 80s, it seems like, you know, I would never order a burger or nuggets. It would always be fries and a milkshake. And they're always asking me, "Are you sure you don't want, you know, a sandwich with that?" And I'm like, "Of course, no, definitely not." You know, and I'm like, "Oh, by the way, make sure you don't add any salt to my fries." I would always tell them that
You
too.
would have your McDonald's French fries without salt?
Yes, always. That was always the
You
way it was.
must have been the only kid in America who did that.
Right, and between 75 and 85, like 5 to or was it 5 to 15 years old, probably, I was doing that all the time. And,
Wow.
but then peer pressure set in, you know? And then I was like, "Ah." One other thing along that time frame when I was growing up was I remember my grandmother used to make chicken soup. It was really good, homemade, and she always made 2 pots. Of course, I wasn't vegan, I didn't even know what vegan was, but I did know that one of the pots had added salt and one had no added salt, and I would always choose the one with no added salt. I always liked that one better.
You were against salt even as a kid.
Yeah, yeah, for
All
sure.
right, so
I
you were
just
on a reasonably healthy diet.
and keep in mind, I didn't know why. Okay. I must have been in tune with my body, is all I can say. And I know I must have felt terrible after I would make a bad mistake.
Yeah.
And those were the only two things I was honed in on. Also, I wasn't really doing anything else outside of that. But you know, peer pressure set in. So 15 to 30, I was doing what everybody else did. I'm like, oh, this is so much easier. You know, nobody's asking me questions. Nobody's bothering me. Nobody's saying I'm gonna, you
So
know,
you had a lousy diet from 15 to 30.
until I went to the doctor at 30 and says your cholesterol is 201. And I'm going to check it again when you come back next. And if it doesn't change and go down, then I'm putting you on pharmaceuticals.
So what'd
So
you do?
I went onto the internet in the year 2000.
Okay.
And I started looking around. There was no documentaries to watch or anything. But right away I was like, oh, it's the food. Of course it's the food.
Right.
So I was like, I'm gonna make a list of the top 5 foods that are harming me the most and probably raising my cholesterol the most, and I'm just never gonna eat them again. And
And what were those top five?
it was red meat, butter, cheese. Actually, maybe it's only 4. Red meat, butter, cheese, and ice cream. Yeah, those were
Okay.
it's only 4. So I immediately cut them out. Of course, I was raising kids and I had a spouse, and nobody was happy with me. Okay, because I was making milkshakes after every dinner with
Right.
Breyer's ice cream.
Now, were you as slender then as you are now?
Yes, yes. So I tell people, don't judge a book by its cover. Do
Uh-huh.
not, right? It's all about what's going on inside. But I
Right.
was also running my landscape business 5 to 7 days a week outdoors, physical labor. I mean, I was working hard, unlike
Okay.
the average, office person. I mean, the average
Right.
office person could not eat like I was eating. They would have gained a lot of weight, kind of like what you're alluding to. But I
Right.
didn't, because I was really working it off. And
Okay.
but it still obviously was getting to me on the
Right.
inside with my health. So I didn't think I felt bad, but I can tell you after I cut those things out, the high fat foods basically, I started to feel a lot better as time went on. It's like, oh, and I
And
didn't
your
go.
cholesterol plummeted, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And I didn't have to go back to the doctor. I didn't bother go. I'm like, I feel better. Like, this is it. Because the doctor wasn't going to tell me. Doctor didn't know.
All right. So after you eliminate those four horrific foods, do you say to yourself, okay, now let's eliminate 10 more?
No, I'd say at that point I was really labeled as a health nut. I wasn't even vegetarian.
You were still
And
eating chicken, right?
right, and fish. Yeah, the health food of the 90s,
Yeah.
right? The fish. And but everybody was not happy with me because I was back to where I was when I was growing up. Everybody around me wants to do what everybody else is doing, and by that time I could see everybody's starting to really get ill, chronically ill.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I that just went on, and unfortunately that marriage did not last. That
Ah,
actually ended 9 years later. And when that happened, I think I became vegetarian by default in 2009, because I realized when I was shopping, I never bought any meat. I never consciously or willingly was purchasing any meat. So I guess I
right.
was like, well, I'm vegetarian. And then, of course, YouTube started to become very popular around that time. I was driving long distance because I live in the future. Like I said, I was actually, at the time, I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and commuting back to my landscape business in this Northern Virginia, DC area. So I would listen to YouTube videos while I was driving the car because I had a smartphone. Those had just come out. And so I started learning more about lifestyle and diet and food. And I said, well, I hear this dairy is not so good. Maybe I'll just get rid of that, and of course I did. In 2014, it's when I started the organization. And I can tell you right away, I noticed benefits, things I didn't even know were wrong. Things like my body odor went away. I'd say that was the biggest thing. Like my tongue used to get this white haze all over it. That's gone too. Bad breath, earwax production. I used to have terrible problems with earwax constantly building up and impacting, to the point where I had to go into the doctor's office, had to flush it out with a peroxide bulb. And, it had to be somebody else. I couldn't do it. So all that went away, and other things too. I mean, my poop doesn't stink like it used to. I mean, I thought all that was genetic too. I was like, oh, I inherited this from my dad, because my dad it was happening. I could tell. I was like, I'm turning into my dad. And the smells. That's what it was. But they're all gone now. So, and then I started learning more as I started the organization. I'm like, this is good for me. It's got to be good for everybody else too. So let's just start telling people about it. How are we going to do that? Start up a nonprofit, start up events, and then keep trying to dial it in more. Now we're at the point where, like I said, our goal is to eradicate non-communicable disease in humans, and we think that is absolutely doable.
Well, I think you can do it, Mike.
Yeah,
I've
well,
got
with the
confidence
help of
in you.
everyone. Okay, I'm not saying we can do it ourselves. I'm saying that's
Yeah.
the goal, but we got to get everybody involved.
Yeah. And are you looking for more farms?
Always. I mean, we tell people now, you probably see on our emails that of course, we're available to give talks in person or online about what we're doing, the different things. So there's so much more that I haven't even been able to get into here and won't. We don't have enough time. So we talk to people about what we're doing. And yes, we accept donations. We're a 501c3. Everything's for the mission, or we'll even design a new initiative for someone who's very passionate about something, maybe they don't know how to do it, but they have some resources like some land, we will develop an initiative for that person if they want to partner with us in that way.
All right. So people can go to aplantbaseddiet.org and sign up for your mailing list, or they could
Yes.
just email you. What's the email address?
At gmail.com. So
aplantbaseddiet.org at gmail.com.
that's it. Yep. And
Um,
it's me. You can email me directly.
there you go. And you will be around to answer those emails for the next 95 years.
Yeah, that's
Just
right.
don't let the emails build up, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Because that would be I don't like to. I'm always try to be as conscientious as possible for sure. You want to stay on top of everything, because it's not a good feeling. Yeah, when you get behind on stuff like
Right.
that, especially if I have to. It takes me maybe 50 years more to catch up. I don't want to have to do that.
Right. And then people could go to plantbasedevents.info
Yes.
to find out what events you've got coming up, and they'll also learn about that once they're on your mailing list,
Yes.
right?
That's
I
right.
get your emails. For some reason, every email from you, I get 2 of them. I guess I
Yeah.
signed up twice.
Well, we're transitioning because we've been
Uh-huh.
transitioning as an organization for years now. We used to do Veg Fest, which we don't do anymore. So
Uh-huh.
we're consolidating our email list. So we still have a couple of local lists
Uh-huh.
because those are to tell people specifically about local events in their areas. But we also have a newer one, which is our worldwide list, which is
Okay.
really for people who are going on our travel events, because we want people to be able to leave their house and not harm themselves.
Right.
So I think eventually we'll probably combine them all into one, but for right now, that's just how we have it.
That's separate list.
Yep.
All right. Um, and you're gaining credibility. You're getting older and you're still with us.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
the hardest part, truly, I do believe, is compliance. And just as we've learned, because we just did our health optimization club last month on reversing Alzheimer's and dementia, we learned in the study the degree to which someone was able to fully reverse that condition was directly in line with the degree to which they were compliant with the strict, actually, well, strict
You
is not.
don't like to say strict.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the study used a different word. It was the intensive lifestyle changes. Okay,
Right.
and they are intensive. So when you look at what we have, our 6-pillar standard and the healthy vegan food and lifestyle medicine and aligning with nature, that's our purpose. We need to assist people in being able to adhere to these intensive lifestyle changes because they are lifestyle changes for everyone.
All right. Well, Mike, you got to come on at least once a year,
Yeah.
and and you don't seem to have aged at all. I got
All
to
right.
admit it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I don't, and I
And
also,
you know what? I think you seem a little younger than you seemed last year.
well, I've probably eaten more fruit since I saw you last in 1 year than I've ever eaten in my life.
Well, what percentage of your diet is raw and what percentage is cooked?
It's usually 2/3 raw. We usually
2/3 raw.
have 100% fruit for breakfast, fresh, ripe, cut fruit, almost always pineapples. And then lunch is a salad, raw salad. And then dinner is usually cooked meal.
All right. Well, it's always great to talk to you, Mike. And
Yes.
we'll put the links in the show notes. And, try to get rid of this non-communicable disease. And after you're done with that, maybe take on the communicable diseases.
Sure. Okay.
We're counting on you, buddy.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Take care. This has been the Glenn Mercer Show, where everyone listening turns vegan, regains their health, and annoys their friends and relatives. Find us on YouTube at The Glenn Mercer Show and across all your major podcast platforms. Don't forget to subscribe.